What's up everybody, this is Danny, and today I'm going to be taking a look at the Moto G 2015, or also known as the third generation. The last two versions really showed the world how mid-range or budget devices should perform, and in my opinion, this year they outdid themselves with this Moto G. The design language stays pretty much the same here with the same curved back, and the trim on the outside makes it look a little bit more premium than the previous models, and you can see there's a metal strip now on the back with the new camera sensor and dual tone LED flash. Even though the construction is mostly plastic, it has a little bit different choices in material this year. On the back you get more of a textured plastic instead of that smooth plastic, and it gives it a little bit better grip in the hand. To me, this is a much welcome change because the second generation was way too slippery in the hand, so I put some D-brand skins on there to give it that texture that I wanted and also to give it the color combinations that I wanted. So that was one of the biggest complaints about the Moto G, is that you weren't able to customize it before you got it. Well, it seems like Motorola listened and brought their flagship customization down to the Moto G. Now Moto Maker is available, so you can customize even the backplate to that metal plate however you want it before it gets shipped to you. And if you want some further customization, they do offer a flip case, which gives it a little bit different texture on the back, and it gives you some protection as well. The improvements continue with the improved 5-megapixel camera sensor for your selfies, and on the bottom there is a single speaker, which I feel like is a little bit better this year. It sounds pretty good actually. There's no wireless charging or NFC built in here, but that makes sense for this price range. The backplate is removable though, and you will see an SD card slot, which is great for the 8GB model with 1GB of RAM, which starts at $179. But if I were you, I would get the higher end model at $219 with 2GB of RAM and 16GB of onboard storage. No matter which configuration you get water protection built in here. They do say it's IPX7 certified, which is certified against splashes, but they had no problems here dunking this thing in water. I've tested myself and left it underwater for at least 10 minutes or so. It's rated up to 30 minutes underwater, and it works perfect. The one thing I suggest is that you make sure that you put this backplate on properly, because if you don't, you'll get some water back there. And even if it's on properly, after you dunk this thing in water or have a water incident, make sure you take the backplate off, because I found some water that was back there. Make sure you dry that off, and you need to be aware that there is no warranty when it comes to water damage. The display stays the same at 5 inches at 720p resolution, and for the most part, it looks pretty decent. But the one thing that I did notice is that the colors are pretty muted here, and if you're looking at the viewing angles for an IPS display, it is not the greatest. For the average consumer that's buying in this price range, I don't think they're going to complain about the display whatsoever, but this looks like where Motorola cut some corners to make this Moto G affordable. The 5-inch display form factor though keeps this thing very manageable in the hand. I had no problems using this thing one-handed, and I have average size hands, and everything's reachable on the screen. And the ergonomics of this Moto G, I really like using it. It was really comfortable on a day-to-day basis. Just like their previous generations, the Android experience remains relatively stock with a few Motorola enhancements, but even with the lower end Snapdragon 410 processor, this thing is blazing fast. And this is the 2GB model I have here, so I can't speak for the 1GB model, but the performance was so good and so snappy that it was hard to tell between this and a flagship device. Seriously. Day-to-day performance is really consistent, and a lot of that has to do with the stock Android experience, because you don't have all these different skins and bloatware bogging this thing down, and it's running the latest available Android build. And the 2470 mAh battery combined with all of this is absolutely phenomenal. I've never seen a battery so consistent and so good. I mean, I'm getting over 7 hours of on-screen time, and the least I've gotten is about 5.5. So when it comes to battery performance, I couldn't kill this thing in a day. So you're going to be super happy with this if you want that endurance from your phone. Now, the only time that I ran into some performance issues is if you're going to try to play some graphically intensive games like Mortal Kombat X, because the Adreno 306 GPU is not that powerful. It's playable, but the frame rates aren't as good. But if you're just going to do some casual gaming, then you should have no problems. If you're going to just play something like Leo's Fortune or some puzzle games, then that will run without any problems. Even though I found myself not using these Motorola enhancements, I thought I'd bring them up. The one thing I did use is active display, which when you pick up your phone, all of your notifications will be there right on the front of the screen, and it doesn't have any effect to battery life. But the one thing that I did use is some of these actions, which if you double chop, it will activate the flash, and if you just twist your wrist twice, it will open the camera, which is super convenient. I find myself using it all the time. Speaking of the camera, the Moto G 3rd Gen gets a huge bump up to a 13 megapixel camera sensor with dual tone LED flash and f2.0 aperture. What's pretty impressive is this is the same camera sensor from the Nexus 6, which was a flagship about a year ago. So how good is this camera? Well, using it, the first thing I noticed is that it tends to overexpose very heavily. So thank God that there is a mode here where you can change the focus point and also change the exposure, and you're gonna be using this quite often, so get familiar with this. When it comes to image quality in good lighting, it's actually pretty good. You can see that it's got a decent dynamic range. It's got some good colors here. So long as you're in good light, even in action photos, I found that the image quality was pretty passable. In indoor lighting conditions, you are going to notice some noise creeping in here. It's still passable, but when you take it into dark or severe lighting conditions, the image quality is going to absolutely fall apart. So long as you are taking things in good light, then you will get decent colors and you will get some decent sharpness, but indoor wise, not so great. The new 5 megapixel front facing camera also does a pretty decent job, so I think if you're a selfie lover, you won't be too disappointed. When it comes to video, I think it's pretty decent. It has a maximum resolution of 1080p, and it doesn't have optical image stabilization, of course, but actually I think it does a pretty good job. It's fairly sharp, but don't expect anything too crazy out of this camera, but that's exactly what we would expect out of a budget device like this. To wrap it all up, I'm ridiculously impressed with the Moto G 3rd generation. I mean, it's got a decent camera, it's got decent build, it's got incredible battery life, almost 2-day battery life here. It's got awesome performance, and it also has Moto Maker right off the bat, so you can get it exactly how you like it. If you're looking for a budget phone, then look no further. I highly recommend this phone, and I don't think you'll have any regrets. Thanks for watching, guys. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed this, and I will see you guys in the next video.